Hey guys, we are live here on a special Behind the Screams here in the middle of December, coming up on the holiday season. And we're going to give it just a few minutes and see if we've got anybody on here with us. We hope that we hope you can hear me okay. I see a few of you popping on here, Eric and Heather. If one of you guys could just kind of type on here and let me know that the connection is okay and that you're hearing me just fine, we'll give a few minutes and get started. I want to make sure everything is running okay. I've had some sketchy service here when I've been trying to do these, so just want to make sure. All right, so I want to remind you, we're going to be answering questions and talking about our experiences during this investigation. So if you got a question you want to ask, or even just a comment you want to make, I can see all that over here on the side. So, okay, looks like people can hear us good. Hey, Heather, awesome. Thank you for letting me know. Hey, Stephen. Hey, Eric. And hey, everyone else that's on there. So we're going to go ahead and get started. For those of you that followed along during my season 2, which aired during the month of October, we did special Behind the Screams lives with guests who either investigated with me or ran some of these different locations that I investigated. The first episode was on Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary in Petros, Tennessee. And I did a collaboration investigation with the girls from Sisters Paranormal. And we tried to go on and do live with them during that Behind the Screams, but I was having a lot of technical difficulty. So we decided that we were going to go on here and have them back. And what better time to have them back on than when they released their episode from Brushy Mountain Prison, which also featured Ghost Biker, myself, and my camera guy, Josh. So I've got my special guest with me, Dr. Sumner. She's actually literally in the house. And so we wanted to come on here and make sure to do this because this was a very special investigation. I've investigated the prison. This will be my 6th time investigating it. And I know Dr. Sumner, as well as her team, Sisters Paranormal, has investigated multiple times as well. So what we're going to do, we hope you guys went, and if you didn't see my episode, I hope you went back and watched it. And if you didn't catch Sisters episode, I hope you check that out as well. We've got the links in the previous post that I did, and we will be posting that as well in the links to this after it's done. So they're short watches. I think mine's 40 minutes. I think yours is what, 30 or 30 or 40?
20, yeah, 27, I think, something like that.
Okay, so it's interesting. Time flies when you're watching it, and you'll get a lot of history from it. So we're gonna go ahead and get started here. And like I said, we're gonna, if we don't catch your question when you ask it, we are actually gonna go back and we will go back and look and try to answer everyone's questions or comments. So I want Dr. Sumner to tell a little bit about her group. I've actually had the privilege of investigating with them on a couple investigations this past year. And we've got, a pretty similar style with what we do as far as the videos. We're both very heavy on the history. Because I know we feel like if, speaking for myself, if you don't have the history, you're going to have a really hard time with the paranormal, because a lot of that stems from that historical background. And, so anyways, we're just going to let her tell you a little bit about herself and the team.
All right, well, thank you everybody for watching. We very much appreciate you tuning into this live, and thank you, Miranda, for having me and for kind of showcasing Sisters Paranormal in this investigation. So what Sisters Paranormal is we're obviously a paranormal investigation group. We are an all-female paranormal investigation group. It's made up of my twin sister and my younger sister, and then 2 of our friends. And we've been investigating since 2014. We've had the opportunity to collaborate with Miranda and Ghost Biker Explorations for several of those investigations this year. We just met actually in January of this year, and we've been fortunate enough to do several investigations together. And Brushy to us was one that that my twin sister and I actually went to last year, and we had such an amazing investigation with so much incredible evidence that we wanted to go back this year, 2019, and do a follow-up investigation. And we asked Miranda to collaborate with us, and we were fortunate enough that she was available to do that. And we came up with a lot of great evidence. We had an amazing investigation, and our videos were able to highlight some of the stuff that we did catch that night.
Yeah, I think we were there, was it 9 hours?
Yes.
I believe we spent 9 hours there. We went and we did the day tour, and then went back and spent the night there for 9 hours. And, it was really cool because I felt like we got to do some really interesting and different experiments, which we tried to highlight those in our videos. And I know I had mentioned during, when I was talking about my video before, that we're going to be going back. We had so much, it's kind of hard at some of these locations to go and narrow the information down to get it into like a 20, 30, 40-minute video and be able to tell the history and still actually be able to tell the story. And so I know I'm going to have to release some some videos later on of some of the uncut locations, because we had activity from the moment we got there until later on. So if you want to tell a little bit about yours, I know in our history we kind of highlighted, in mine, my history that I highlighted was was Brushy Mountain and how it became the prison that it is, kind of how it started. Why don't you talk a little bit about your two videos, because you've done two at this point. Kind of talk about what you highlighted in your history, because to me that's one of the most fascinating parts, is the history.
Yes, absolutely. As Miranda said, we had the fortunate task of going back twice to Brushy Mountain, and what fascinated us obviously was the fact that most prisons are in the United States are created for a specific purpose, either for punishment of prisoners or rehabilitation. Brushy Mountain Penitentiary was specifically built to house coal miners, those prisoners that they were going to send into the coal mine to actually get revenue for the state of Tennessee. So that in and of itself is fascinating because it has that unique aspect. So you're talking about a prison that was made to house those people that were sent into these mines to get revenue for the state, and so because of that, you've got this this different set of emotions, if you will, from the prisoners who were there and that were housed there in the early stages of Brushy Mountain. They were forced to work. They were forced to work hard, and if they didn't meet certain quotas, if they didn't do certain tasks, they were essentially abused and punished for not meeting those expectations. Obviously, when the coal mines closed in the 1960s, it became more of a standard prison, if you will, with regard to the rehabilitation aspect or just the punishment aspect for the crimes that were committed. And it really became, because it was turned into a maximum security prison, it became one of the most violent prisons in the country. So we're talking, murders on a daily basis. Prisoners were fighting for their lives on a daily basis, fighting off, rival gang members. And so it really became a place of despair. Because as most of you know, if you watched our videos, Brushy Mountain is called, the nickname was called the end of the line, because the prisoners would essentially never really be coming out of that prison because they had life sentences. So, when they walked in, they knew they would probably never be coming out. So the end of the line was a very apt nickname for the prison. And when you walk into it now, it's interesting because you do feel, a little bit of that sense of what it would have been like to be in there. There's a sadness, if you will, kind of a heaviness when you walk in. You notice the cells are small and they were housing 3-4 inmates at a time, very cramped conditions at that point. So it's definitely a unique place to investigate for sure.
Yeah, and it actually, just because of this history, leads to a variety of hauntings in that location. Because not just the daily prison life, which was a challenge in and of itself and very dangerous. you had the fact that they were minors. So the land is a Native American land. So you have that. You also have the prisoners who were minors. There were several, actually there were quite a few mining accidents on that property and in the mountains surrounding it, mines that had caved in, whole groups of miners that lost their lives. So you've got the mining aspect of it, and then you've also got the prison side of it. So it leads to a variety of activity in the location that we got there. And I think we experienced a little bit of all of it during all of our different times there at Brushy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then one of the things that also lead to some of the hauntings, I suspect, is the fact that a lot of the inmates that died in the prison are actually buried close by. So there are bodies there on the mountainside right beside the prison, and so that essentially the spirits are still there. They're serving out that sentence into eternity, for lack of a better term.
I know from what I had read, I think there were around 400 bodies that's buried nearby. I know when I went there, because that's the prison is not far from my hometown and from where I grew up. So I was there on one occasion and actually visited over at the cemetery. And so that was really cool. There weren't any marked graves. There is a marker there, but at one time they had marked graves, but right now there's not. But there's supposedly 400 bodies there. And then there's also, I couldn't say how many mines are there in the mountains, but I know 3 or 4 that's there, and one of them was caved in, had an explosion in it, and actually still has the bodies still inside of the mine.
Absolutely. So this was a very unique investigation for us, and what we both like to do, both of our teams like to do, is if we can, we take a day tour before the investigation, and we were fortunate enough to do that. And the tours at Brushy are very cool. Even if you don't do a paranormal investigation there, we encourage you to go just to take the day tour, because they're actually led by former employees and former inmates that were housed in Brushy when it was a penitentiary. So you get a very unique aspect when you go and do those day tours. So I highly encourage you to do those. But we took a day tour. We spent probably 3 or 4 hours there, and that enabled us to go in and look at all of the locations. We knew, because we'd been there before, we knew the backstory of the hauntings and the paranormal reports of a lot of these different locations on the property. So it allowed us to go in and really look at where we wanted to set up our cameras, where we wanted to leave stationary items when we came back for the night investigation. So to us, the day tour is just as valuable as going in and doing the paranormal investigation, because you're not losing that time when you go in for the nighttime investigation.
Yeah, because we actually had a meeting. We went through, we got the daytime tour, saw the lay of the land, and then actually had a meeting after that to discuss, the equipment that we had, what we were going to set up, kind of some of the approaches and techniques we wanted to take. And then, came back a couple hours later for the actual investigation, which really helped, because we had a lot of equipment. And like I said, we got a lot of activity to try to showcase in that short period of time. So I know, it was different for me because, I come from a team before I started investigating solo. And, if you all watch my episodes, you'll know I typically investigate alone. And so this was really cool because I was able to investigate with Kristy and her team, which, when you investigate alone, it's sometimes hard to, kind of have that dialogue back and forth. So we were able to really kind of play off of each other with some of this and actually do some different experiments that you wouldn't be able to do if you were doing it alone. So let's talk a little bit about some of the equipment that we used. For me, when I investigate, like I said, because I'm alone, I tend to have, a few pieces. I travel light because I'm on the motorcycle. but we were fortunate. We had a lot of cameras this time.
we did. And just a sidebar, after we do these investigations, we get a lot of people asking, when are you going to release the video? When are you going to start showcasing the evidence? And for those paranormal investigators that are watching, that it takes a lot of time to go through all of the equipment. And we had 18 cameras set up that night vision video cameras that we had set up. We had 9 voice recorders. My team, we were all wearing body cameras, so that's all footage that we go through. We were also carrying voice recorders, so along with our stationary, we had those that we carried. And when every piece of equipment runs for 9 hours, you have to sit and watch and listen to all of that equipment. So it is a little bit tedious, as those paranormal investigators know, but we feel that we have a lot of evidence that validate the paranormal claims that come out of Brushy Mountain.
Yeah, and we're both very particular as far as what we put out there. If there's ever a question, really, for myself, I don't want to put it out there. If it's something that's questionable. And so, like I said, I always say, if in doubt, throw it out. But I know I had 4 cameras myself, 4 stationary ones, as well as 4 recorders. So what we tried to do was we went in and we tried to pick the different hot spots from our past investigations, and then also from what we had heard, claims of activity. Every time I go, there's always new claims, because, I was going back before it had actually been open to the public. And, you just see a progression of the activity over time, with the construction, with the changes, and just with the different people and the different dynamics that's in there. So, we set up and we hit the hole first. And if you want to talk a little bit about, the hole, why it is what it is, and why we hit that location.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So for those who haven't been to Brushy, the hole was the solitary confinement area when the prison was in operation. So you go down, it's subterranean, you go down this set of stairs into this room, and off of the main room, there's a smaller room that has 5 very small cells. It has 2, each cell has 2 bunks. And when you're in those cells and the door is shut, it is completely dark. And then there's an outer door that's shut beyond those cell doors. And so it is completely blacked out. So when you were a prisoner in the hole, and they could hold you up there for 30 days, when you were a prisoner, you were in complete darkness. You were in complete isolation. You got a bucket for a toilet, and you got a bucket of water, and you got whatever food scraps that they wanted to bring you that day. So it was a very dark, dank place, and a place of despair, essentially, because once you were in the hole, you were confined there for quite a number of days. So when we were there on our prior investigation, we were able to get several EVPs from an entity we believe was known as George. He also goes by G. So when we set up our equipment in the hole, we are specifically looking for that entity. And so we set up a night vision camera in the back corner of the hole, and we put a voice recorder in one of the cells there. And so after we set up all the stationary equipment there, we came back as a group to have an EVP session. And we used the REM pods and an SLS camera, the EDI box. We used the EDI box down there, and several pieces of equipment. And when we went back and reviewed our audio and video footage, we did capture some very unique things that would be germane to that situation. So one of Soul Sisters investigators, Kim, she asked, G, are you here with us tonight? And that was during setup. And because we have cameras and voice recorders running when we do our setup, and Kim had asked, G, are you with us tonight? And we caught a very solid yes. And, we caught that during our evidence review, which to us is validation that there is an intelligent entity down in the whole area. And then our voice recorders also caught at a point in time where Miranda and Josh had gone into the hole. The audio, all of the audio that was running that night in that area actually caught the same EVP, and it says back here in the corner. Yeah. And what was interesting about that was Josh and Miranda both heard it in the moment, which is pretty rare.
Yeah, we actually heard that in the moment, which would be a disembodied voice. And then I always wear a mobile recorder on me. And I start that from the minute I get there, because you just never know when you're going to get stuff. We get a lot during setup as well. So so we went in there, we caught it on my recorder, we caught it on Josh's camera, we caught it on the stationary recorder that you had sitting there, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, the stationary cameras that you have set up also has audio. I think you caught a very faint, it's not very good audio, that's why we drop recorders with our video, but I think that audio actually caught it. It was a loud EVP, so that's on both of our videos as well. And
again, to us, it's a sign of intelligence. It's an entity that's acknowledging that they're coming into the room, and it's saying, "Come back here into the corner." Again, a sign of intelligence, which to us is pretty remarkable as a paranormal investigator. So we did spend some time, as Miranda said, down there. We did some EVP sessions, and then we moved over to the gymnasium, which was a very interesting night that night. You want to start in on that?
Yeah, actually, out of all the times that I've been to Brushy, I've only spent time in the gymnasium one other time, and had a very good EVP session with the team that I was with at the time. And so other than that, I hadn't spent very much time in there. But and I think your team hadn't really done anything at all in that location. So we actually caught on that one. You know, I always travel with my SLS camera with me, and I like to try to sort of keep it in a stationary location once I get to the room that I'm going to be in, because sometimes it will get false positives. What an SLS camera is, if for those of you that don't know, it's ran off of an Xbox Connect system, and it will allow you to see when you're in a dark room if there is some type of entity or anomaly that shows up. It actually maps it as a stick figure. And sometimes if you're in a room the reason I don't like to move it around a whole lot is because if you're in a room that has a lot of columns or any type of vertical structure in that room, sometimes it will map that as one of those figures. So the cool thing about the gymnasium that we were in, it was just a complete open room. There were no chairs in there at that time. There were no columns. There wasn't anything that could lead to a false positive. And so we actually were very fortunate to be able to catch this blip on the screen. It kind of, to me, it looked like sort of a blob that appeared. I think was it in front of the REM pod?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had a REM pod set up in there. We had glow in the dark balloons, and we also had I think a couple of glow in the dark balls that would glow whenever you would move them. And Chris actually saw what looked like a shadow figure with her own eye. And then right at that time, I mapped it on the SLS camera, some kind of blob, and Josh actually had the camera rolling and was able to catch that shadow move in front of the REM pod, as well as on the SLS camera, which was pretty cool.
And we spent probably, I'd say, about 45 minutes to an hour in the gymnasium. And as Miranda said, we had several trigger items set up. And for those paranormal investigators who are with us tonight, you know that those are very important to try to elicit a response. For those that aren't paranormal investigators, what we do is we put out things that we would consider germane to the situation. So if there's, if we know a prisoner smokes, we would leave cigarettes. When we were in the gymnasium, we left things that would indicate motion or play, such as balls, things that we felt an entity could interact with, which is why we left the glow in the dark balloons. And we had the REM pods out, which are just devices that measure energy, essentially for lack of, for just a general term, they measure energy.
And I think we did too.
Yeah.
Because, I had my REM pod and you had yours, and we were trying to just sort of see if we could kind of get this dueling REM pod action going on to see it would sort of validate what one was being used for.
Right. So we had a lot of personal experiences in the moment. We did hear some laughter, which we both highlight on our videos, and we had some other interesting things, which we'll talk about either later or you'll see when we do a couple of additional releases about Brushy. But during that time, yes, I did see a shadow move across the REM pod, which you can hear in both of our videos. And I didn't hear at the time. Miranda said, hey, I just mapped something, and that's why I asked her to repeat it. And Josh was fortunate enough to be holding his camera on the REM pod when the shadow figure ran across it again. So to us, it's, again, very, very, very validating that something that we can't explain is in that room and is in the gymnasium, which to us is pretty cool.
Yeah, I know when I was in there before, I'd spoke to a man who he was 45 and he had murdered his brother. That was what I had got on the previous one. And it seemed like after I got him, it seemed like he followed me around the entire time. So I was a little curious to see if that would happen this time, once I was in there, if that activity. And what was crazy the time before when I got that, it also seemed to, when we would do group sessions, would show up in those group sessions. So from other investigators who actually wasn't in there during that investigation. So, I was interested to see that, but we kind of didn't do that same technique that we had done, or we didn't follow that line of questioning with this one. We were a little more indirect, I think, with that questioning.
Yes.
But we had our static cameras set up like Chris mentioned. We had you had 18, correct? Total. So we put them down in the hole, the gymnasium, death row, let's see, medical, the auditorium, let's see, the
all of the cell blocks.
All the cell blocks, yeah. We also had 2 cameras in the cafeteria. We actually had 2 cameras in the auditorium as well. Let's see, we had 1 in the hole, 1 in the wood shop area, also in laundry. And 1 in the kitchen. Yes, that's correct. Yeah, in the cafeteria, we actually had 3, I guess. Yes. So we had 2 in the cafeteria part and then 1 back in the kitchen. And then recorders, with those along with our mobile recorders. And something interesting that was happening while we were actually doing the Estes method, which we'll talk about a little more here in a few minutes. But while we were doing that, we were actually getting interactions in the surrounding areas. We were actually catching voices from medical, which was back in behind where we were, as well as the auditorium.
And that's another reason why we like to keep stationary equipment out, because for 2 reasons. One, we want to make sure that since we have the time and we have the location to ourselves, that we have all of those hot spots, if you will, covered. And so we can go back and review them. And then also for that validation purpose, because that night there were 5 investigators, Josh and Miranda, and then 3 Soul Sister investigators. And there were 2 employees from Brushy Mountain that stayed in the administration offices. But other than that, we were the only people on the property. So when we leave these stationary cameras up and we know that we are all in a location, say the gymnasium, and at that same time, we're getting noises in the cafeteria or noises in one of the cell blocks, we can rule out very quickly that it's not one of us.
Yeah, and something else that's interesting to note, if you've not been to Brushy, behind the walls, it's a series of buildings. It's not just one big building, So when we talk about the hole, that's actually in a separate building from the actual main complex. Death row was in a separate building as well. So some of this activity that we were getting from that, there was nobody else around. And for us, we only separated during setup. Correct. We separated. So I could set my equipment up, she could set hers, and then also so that I could go and just kind of film some B-roll and some talking. But then, and we had actually planned to kind of do some separate stuff that night, but we just had such good interaction together with the activity we were getting. we ended up staying together the whole time. The only other time we did separate was when we were picking up equipment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then after the gymnasium, we walked into essentially what would be one of the main buildings there, and we went up to the medical ward. And the medical ward to us as Soul Sisters is one of our most active hotspots there at Brushy. When we were there the first time, we had left a stationary voice recorder as well as a night vision camera. And what we caught was unexplainable to us. We had cell doors slamming. We had footsteps. Probably one of the best examples of footsteps that we've ever captured happened there at Brushy. You could hear footsteps running up the one of the main concrete stairwells there outside of medical. So we decided to set up a stationary camera as well as a voice recorder there in medical. And through the night, through the 9 hours that it ran, we were capturing bangs, knocks, slams, footsteps, slaps, all kinds of things that we couldn't explain. So we knew we wanted to spend some time there. And one of the most interesting things that night is we had just finished an EVP session. And as we were all leaving, Josh and Jenny were bringing up the rear of the group, and Josh audibly heard something smack the wall beside his ear, and to the point that he called all of us back. And when he turned and said something just smacked the wall behind me, the body camera that Jenny was wearing actually picked up the phrase, "I warned you."
We caught that as well on my recorder. I don't think we caught the "I warned you" on Josh's camera, but I know we caught it on my recorder as well as your body camera. And I don't know if was it caught on the stationary, or were we too far away at that point?
It's very muffled on the stationary that's there, but you definitely hear the slap on the voice recorder. So again, I encourage you to go back and watch both of our videos, because to us, again, it's that sign of intelligence. Not only did we capture the slap on the wall, which to us is an indication that, hey, something's trying to get our attention, it also followed up that slap with an EVP, such as, "I warned you." And, again, to us, that sign of intelligence is something that is very validating as a paranormal investigator, for sure.
Yeah, and I'm going to take just a minute, and because I've been monitoring the comments over here. And again, welcome all of you that have tuned in here. I know a lot of you have actually visited Brushy. And if you're still on here, I know I've got actually a couple people that used to work at Brushy. So we'll talk about that here in just a few minutes. But I wanted to address something that Melinda Wooden commented on here. She said she was fascinated by Brushy Mountain, probably because she had multiple experiences the only time that she had ever been. I definitely want to go back. I swear I heard voices when I stood inside one of the cells in the hole, and no, it wasn't the other living visitors talking. I had something touch my head as I was leaving the cafeteria area twice. My mom says she thought I tapped her shoulder in the intake cell, but I wasn't even near her. Several times I thought I saw someone walk by, but there was no one around. It was really quite incredible. And I've heard several people say the same thing about that. I know the hole, that's one of my favorite places to investigate. When I was there, if you watched my video, I actually did a flashback from the time I was there over Easter weekend investigation. I was part of several groups that went. The very first night, it was just myself and the two administrators that was there. And I actually slept in the hole. I'd been investigating the night before, and so I slept 3 hours in there and got 3.5 minutes of straight activity, which don't know if I'd have been sleeping in there if I'd known everything I was going to get. But for me, it was intelligent. There was some residual that we got in there, but it was a lot of it was intelligence. So it actually knew I was sleeping in there. And so I would encourage you to go back and listen to that. But yeah, that's very cool, Melinda. I know they, like I said, I know that there have been several people that have mentioned having experiences like that. Deanne asks, is the paranormal activity more in locations where people are not at?
And that's a great question. Again, thank you all for the comments, and keep the questions coming, because we do like to respond to those. To answer your question, at Brushy, it was everywhere. It was where we were, and it was also where we were not. As Miranda said, we had those stationary cameras that were set up in some of the cell blocks, and while we were in the gymnasium, because everything is time stamped and we can cross-reference those times where we were and where we weren't, the stationary cameras that were left in the cell blocks were picking up activity simultaneous to our picking up activity in the gymnasium or in the auditorium or in the hall. Some of the stationary cameras that we had in what we refer to as the James Earl Ray cell block, it was capturing a couple EVPs. At the same time, we were capturing shadow figures and REM pod activity in the gymnasium. So for Brushy, it's all over the place, with us and without us. So that's a great question.
Yeah, we actually, while we were there we were there in the in the cafeteria, we did several different experiments based on James Earl Ray.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You know, we played, you know, the I Have a Dream speech. We also took it a step further and played the news announcement that was announcing his assassination. Mm-hmm. And we seemed to actually get pretty good response from that. Josh being the only male that was with us and actually kind of looked a little bit like James Earl Ray.
Like James Earl Ray.
Yeah, they were kind of
the glasses and the hatred. Yeah,
exactly. Once we started playing the death announcement, he was actually getting things happen to him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, he's kind of my silent partner in all this. A lot of you know him because things like to touch him. And, you know, I often say he's got a pretty hard job traveling with me, because he has to essentially be quiet and, you know, sit and film and be put in these uncomfortable situations while we're trying to investigate this. And so he's in this investigation. It was really cool because he actually got to kind of step out and help us investigate, mm-hmm. which was really cool. Mm-hmm. And so I know while we were there in the cafeteria doing those experiments, he was getting touched. I think he had his ears pinched or something.
His ear was pinched.
Yeah, and we also had interaction with a child there in the cafeteria. While we were doing this, I know we were getting bangs and knocks in medical, because that pretty much went on most of the night that we were there. Yeah. Let's see here. Jeff Weaver says, hey. Chris says he doesn't know if he could stay there for the night without freaking out.
It's pretty freaky, Chris.
Yeah, it is. Hey, Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Heather says this is a bucket list location for her team for sure. And I would definitely recommend going there. I also, you know, I'm a biker. So, you know, I tell all my biker friends, there's a lot of great riding in that area too, to check out. Yeah. The Devil's Triangle is nearby. And so take your bikes there, go check it out.
Yeah. So again, thank you. Keep the questions coming. After we left the cafeteria, or after we left medical, we did, like Miranda said, we went into the cafeteria for a few minutes. We went back there a couple of times. But one of the things that we did want to try was what we call the Estes method, and I actually learned this from you, so thank you. So it was a very interesting place to do the Estes method, and you want to go ahead and explain that?
Yeah. So I know a lot of you who are investigators, you probably know what the Estes method is, but for those of you that don't, or maybe didn't watch the video, I will explain it a little more in depth. It was developed out in at the Stanley Hotel in Estes Park by a group of investigators. And what it is it's taken the SB7 spirit box and plugging into it with noise canceling headphones. So normally when you use the spirit box, you know, you're just kind of asking questions and listening to it out loud. The spirit box is a modified AM/FM radio that the theory is that the spirits use the white noise to communicate. So what we do whenever we do the Estes method, you have to make sure there's a couple things you definitely have to do. You have to make sure that the person is using noise canceling headphones. They can't hear what's going on around them, and that they're blindfolded. And then you also want to have a camera on that person. They've got to be isolated. You're going into a total sensory deprivation state, which when you go into that state, everything is heightened. Mm-hmm. And the person who's sitting there listening to the spirit box through the noise canceling headphones is supposed to call out anything that they hear on the spirit box, as well as anything that, they're blindfolded, but as well as anything they see or sense. And, all this is recorded on the recorder as well as on the camera. Mm-hmm. The people who are asking the question, they actually need to go to a different location where where there's no chance of the person being heard. So we were in the James's cell block, correct?
The Magnificent Seven.
Yes, the Magnificent Seven's cell block. And so we each took a turnabout. I was inside of one of the cells, and Soul Sisters, as well as Josh, was out in the main hallway, not the cell block hallway, but out in the main hallway before you go into the cell block. And so they asked questions, and I just called out anything that I heard on there. And there was we got some pretty crazy results with that.
Yes, we really did. And as Miranda said, we all took turns being that sole person, that solitary person in the cell with the headphones, with the blindfold, and listening to the SP7. But Miranda is really the one that it really has the most success when we do this experiment. And we made sure we walked down to the area before we really were filming or what we showed y'all. We were yelling things, making sure that she absolutely could not hear us. And then when we started, it really it was fascinating, because some of the things that she was saying that she heard on the spirit box was in a direct response to the questions that we were asking. And to me, one of the most fascinating things was the way Brushy's situated. There's a side road that goes up through one of the mountains, and we were actually hearing a motorized vehicle going up and down the mountain, either an ATV or a motorcycle or something. And on my video, you hear Jenny say, "What is that?" At the same time, Miranda yells out, "Motorcycle." Which was, to us fascinating, because for two reasons. One, there actually sounded like a motorcycle outside of the prison going up and down the road. And she also has the motorcycle logo on her shirt. So to us, it was in response to one of those two things, which again is fascinating and very validating for us.
Yeah, and I think actually what was interesting is at one point, I think I called out Soul, which you also had Soul Sisters on your shirt. So I couldn't hear that there was any type of motorcycle. And we did have something, I don't know, there was something that started, it felt like it was sitting down beside me, touching my arm, which is a little unnerving when you're sitting there with blindfolded and with noise canceling headphones on. But I don't know if it was just heightened because I couldn't see or what, but there was something that did come in there at one point. But we did get some good answers to good questions. And we released on my episode, we released what I was saying during my Estes method, but we're also going to release at a later date. They're going to be called extended cuts, and we're going to be releasing some videos on my page of their sessions when they did the Estes method. And what was really interesting about their part of it is when we were asking questions, myself, Josh, and whichever soul sister wasn't in the cell, we were getting responses from all around us. We were getting responses from medical. We were getting responses from the auditorium. I know one of the most fascinating questions that was asked was, how many people did you kill? And none of us called out an answer on that, but very clearly you hear a man say a lot. And I know I caught that on my mobile, and I believe it was also caught in, was it medical or the auditorium?
Medical.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then there were several times when I was in there doing the Estes method that you all were hearing stuff coming from down the hall.
Correct.
As well. So that was just pretty fascinating because there was nobody in those rooms. So to go back to the previous question that was asked, we were getting interaction where we were currently, but also in the rooms where nobody was at.
Right.
So.
Right. And I'll just address it quickly. In Miranda's video, she does show things did get a little intense while she was down there in the hole. She was saying that, and down in the cell, she did say that she was being touched and poked, and she felt something was around her. Josh did film some intense scenes with my telling some entities to back off and not to touch her. Just so everybody knows, we don't go in and provoke. We don't go in and with any type of bravado. That's not who we are. But in that situation, because it did get intense, you did see a very real and intense response from me during that moment. So I figured I'd just go ahead and address it right now.
Well, and two, Deanna also asks, do you all keep a log of what you're hearing from the spirit box? Just wondering how many spirits you actually are hearing from over a period of time. I know for myself, I do. I also keep the ovilus with me, which the ovilus, if you all aren't familiar, it has a word bank in it. It actually stores those words. So I like to keep that near whenever I'm using the spirit box as well. Sometimes they link up, not very often, but sometimes. But that gives a way to tell. And then also whenever you're doing the Estes method, I know we'll call out if it's a female that says the voice, or if it's a male, or if it's a strange voice, if it's a whisper. So we have that actually logged on our video. And then when I'm going back and doing evidence review, so when I'm doing my evidence review, I'm having to I always listen to the audio first. If it's something that I've got audio that goes with the video, I try to watch that together, because sometimes you'll get video evidence and not have any sound with it. And so I'll keep a track anytime I do a spirit box session of what was said, and then also if it was a male or female. I mean, speaking for myself, that's how I do.
And pretty much the same, when we go through our evidence review as well, we're always marking and time stamping what we hear. We do things like the Estes method. If Miranda calls out two males talking, then, we make a note of that. There's two males. If she goes, there's two males and a female, obviously we're making a note of that. And so you're right, with the spirit box, there is the chance of multiple spirits coming through. And so that's one of the reasons why she does call that out.
Yeah, and sometimes it is significant if it's a male or a female that says it. So it's kind of significant, what you say, and who's saying it in the moment. What's really cool is when you're in a place like Brushy and you get either a female or you get a child because of it being a male prison, that's one of the things that's always interesting. Which, like I said, we did get when we were. I don't think we had any children's voices come over the spirit box, but we did get an actual, we got an EVP there in the cafeteria of a child. So just looking at the comments here, want to welcome Robin Cantor. I know she's a big follower of Soul Sisters. And Misty Dixon, hey, she says she's new here. Welcome.
Hey, Misty.
And again, Deanna, thank you so much for your comments. Like I said, the Estes was a big thing that we did that night, and we wrapped things up. We went into the auditorium. It was fairly quiet. Yeah. I know typically I get a lot of stuff in the auditorium, but this time didn't really get too much. Got a few things that we're going to release a little bit later. And then we had a pretty good session in the cafeteria. And then we ended down at James Earl Ray's cell. And I think you got something kind of significant at his cell, didn't you? Or am I thinking of a different time?
Well, we didn't pick it up on our audio, but
Okay.
we thought that we heard a go away
Okay.
when we started walking into that cell block. But we did catch some EVPs on that camera that was stationary during the night. Again, we'll be releasing that subsequent evidence further down the road. As you know, we kind of put some of that stuff, Miranda's behind the screens and us, our quick clips. We'll be releasing some of this because we caught so much, and it would just be overwhelming for one video. So
yeah, it was kind of hard to narrow down because anybody that watches mine knows I try to keep them between 20 and 40 minutes, and that's allowing time to tell the story and then also do the investigation. And so, you know, this one being that was there for 9 hours and had so many cameras and recorders, we had to take the best of what we had, which was really hard to narrow down. That doesn't mean that what we're going to release is not good, but the way, and we'll talk about how Kristy releases hers in a minute, but the way I release mine, or I'm going to release these, is we're going to actually take the different sections that we were in. So you'll see some stuff that we released during the episode, but we're going to release the full and extended cuts. So we'll have, while we were there in the hole, I think we were there for, I think we had maybe 15 minutes of real good evidence. We were down there for, I think, about 35 or 40 minutes. Yeah, we had a lot of good flashlight activity, a lot of good EVPs. So we're going to release each of those sections. And my goal right now is to release that during the first quarter of the year. You guys know I typically don't release stuff till October, and I do vlogs in between. But we're going to do a special probably in February is what I'm thinking, where we're going to take some time, release what we got there, release the session in the cafeteria, the full session of all the Estes methods. And so get that out there. So that'll be a little something new for the first part of the year. And I know Kristy, she does these full-length videos, but then she does something called quick clips, which I'll let her tell you about, that you should
well, it's an isolated piece of evidence from each of our investigations. So just one quick clip, 1 minute video, just kind of highlighting one quick piece of evidence, whether it be something from the spirit box or an EVP or a shadow figure. Any of y'all that have watched that are on my YouTube channel or Facebook page have seen some of those that we posted. But to Miranda's point, we will have a lot of stuff that we have yet to release from that Brushy investigation. And kind of how we like to do our investigations is we do like to show you kind of that raw, uncut, this is what it's like in the moment. And we do that to highlight for those non-paranormal investigators what it's actually like inside one of these facilities. And so I'm excited to see what you're going to do with your
Brushy had a lot of different challenges from what we're used to on some of the others. It is it's a very echoey facility, which is something that we don't have at a lot of the others, because it is really open. It's very cold, and just by the nature of how it is. So it's very echoey, and, we just kind of really had to be careful how we were releasing stuff and really, really hawked over the evidence just, because of that element, so it was kind of different for us.
Melinda, you asked a question, have you ever had anything attach itself to you or try to attach to you? If so, how do you rid yourself of it? For me personally, I have not had anything try to attach itself to me. Just again, for myself, I don't go in looking for anything negative or try to provoke anything negative. We do say a prayer of protection before we go in and a prayer of protection after we come out of a location. And so personally, for me, I've never had anything like that, and I consider myself fortunate because there are these places. Brushy is one where you do have those dark entities. You do have some. The emotional impact of the location that you're at and what it experienced through the history of its life cycle as a penitentiary. You will have negativity, but for me personally, I have not.
No, same here. I've never had anything attach itself to me. I've had battles in some locations. I'm also the same with Dr. Sumner, and that's why, I think we really hit it off as far as investigating together. We neither of us provoke. You kind of tailor your investigation style to the type of location you go into. You might be a little more, if you're going into a prison, you might be a little more aggressive when speaking to some of the different entities in the different areas, depending on what kind of role you're trying to take and what kind of reaction you're trying to bring about. But we don't go in actively seeking negative activity. Does that mean you're going to find negative activity if you're not looking for it? Yeah, you might. Because if you've watched any of my past episodes, you'll know the Sunset Hill House was extremely negative and something that we had to call somebody in on. But I have had things, and that house was an example of it. Revenant Acres was another. I've been attacked before physically, and not really spiritually. But, you just really have to be careful. I'm very particular and do the prayer of protection before and after. And if anyone knows me, usually I'm constantly praying to myself during. But thankfully, no, I've not had anything attach. But I do know some people who can help deal with that sort of thing if it happens. You just have to investigating alone, you have to be very, very careful. Josh and I have a great relationship as far as, he knows my personality and he knows when something is wrong. Same with him. If there's a problem, we keep close eye. And I surround myself with like-minded investigators that, if we're going into a dark location, we really take the time and, just try not to put ourselves in those negative situations. And if we find that we are in one, we just really keep an eye on each other. And if one of them says it's time to step out for a few minutes, you step out. Mm-hmm. So let's see. So that was a great question.
Absolutely.
Heather says it's always great to have too much evidence.
Yes.
And I agree. That's a good problem to have. We don't find ourselves in that situation a whole lot.
Right.
So as investigators, that's definitely a good thing. Mm-hmm. Vicki says, I know this is off the subject, but how many old houses in Cleveland have you visited to do these episodes? I've done a lot of personal residence myself. I have been in Cleveland. I think I've done 5 different homes. And then I've also done several that are in the surrounding Cleveland area, like Chattanooga and Charleston, Calhoun, that area. I got to say, Dr. Sumner, she's actually from Florida. So I know she's done some different locations down there. Mm-hmm. So, but for myself, I know I've done, in the surrounding area, probably around 10 to 12, just in the surrounding areas, but 5 in the Cleveland area. Dan Norval says, hey. That's another one. I love watching Dan's stuff. You need to check out the Dan Norval Project. Great people right there.
And Still Cities Paranormal, Heather.
Yes, you need to check out Heather's group, Still City Paranormal, out of Pennsylvania, out of the Steel City. Yep. And Britt Whitlock says, sounds like Brushy was a blast.
Absolutely.
And yes, I can definitely attest to that. Like I said, we've both gone multiple times, and got really good evidence both times. So, it's definitely a great place to visit. And like I said, even if you're not into the paranormal, you need to definitely go and do the daytime tour. And I don't know if he's still on here or not, but if he is and wants to chime in, I know my cousin Anthony, he was a prison guard there at Brushy for quite some time. And I know he's had some really cool stories about being there. So if you're still on and want to add anything, Anthony, go for it.
Yeah.
And anyone else too, you know. I mean, we just encourage you to check out the videos and watch for Dr. Sumner with Soul Sisters quick clips, as well as my extended cuts. And just, you know, anything else you want to add?
No, I just, you know, paranormal investigators, if you haven't been to Brushy and it's on your bucket list, I would just recommend finding a way to go, because it's definitely worth the experience. You know, as Miranda said, just the history alone is worth the price of admission. But the paranormal activity that you can get there, and go armed with a lot of equipment, because you're going to need it to catch all of the evidence that is there.
Okay, Anthony just chimed in. He
Hey,
said
Anthony.
that he's here. How long were you a prison guard there, Anthony? We'll see if I know there's a little bit of a delay here, but I know you were there for quite some time. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I'm fascinated by it, and you know, I love hearing people who, you know, it's one thing for us to go, we're going to seek out the paranormal, but you know, it's really cool to hear people that are in these locations day to day, you know, in the middle of it while it's working, and having this activity while it's going on, but then also that's just immersed in it during the day. I'm just always fascinated by that.
But Heather, yeah, you said it was on your bucket list. So like I said, if you can get a chance to go, you and your team, you should absolutely check it out. And, you know, we can offer you some advice on hotspots, you know, some of the trigger items that you should use, because you should definitely go well armed with trigger items as well.
Yes, and when you're down here in the great state of Tennessee, Heather, with your team, you let me know, so that I'd like to do a collaboration with you guys. I met Heather and her team up at it was in Moundsville at the Archive of the Afterlife's Haunted Relic Expo. Sorry, I couldn't remember the name of the event.
You're so busy.
Yeah, but yeah, it was in March of last year. I got to meet those ladies, and fascinating. We've investigated several of the same places, the Bel Air House, and I love following their stuff. Anthony says he was at Brushy for about 2 years, and that was when they started phasing out. I believe Brushy closed in, was it 2008 or 2009? Okay, yeah, it was 2009. And so they phased out and sent their prisoners to another facility. And again, thank you guys for bearing with me, trying to man these comments and carry on a conversation at the same time.
Yeah.
Joe Shortridge, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. And Steve Studstill, Merry Christmas to you as well. And thank you, Wolf Hawkeye, for your awesome compliments. We appreciate it. We appreciate you guys tuning in. I know we're going to wrap up here pretty soon, unless anybody has anything to add. I was going to ask you, Anthony, right quick. Was there any activity or that you experienced, or anyone else that you maybe heard stories? You don't have to go into specifics, but I was just wondering if, while it was, going on and phasing out, if if you experienced anything odd or heard any of the other guards talk about that. So we'll give you a minute to type since you don't have the luxury of speaking, and I'm putting you on the spot. So. But while he's doing that, okay, yeah, Anthony, he says let's see, you have been all over the compound, but you have both mentioned the coal mines when talking about the history. I can take you to the coal mines.
Nice.
I would love that. I would love that. I will get in contact with you about that because, having family that was coal miners on both my mom and my dad's side, I've always been fascinated by that. So I will get in touch with you on that. But again, we're going to wrap things up since we've been on here an hour now. But I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely go check out Soul Sisters and their video. I know they've got they've investigated some great places, got some great evidence. They've got some evidence that I didn't show in my video. They just kind of delve into it a little bit deeper of what I covered. If you've not watched my video, go check that out. And stay tuned. We kind of taking a little break right now with the season release, been traveling a whole lot. And as a lot of you may know from my post, I recently lost my father who, my best friend, and traveled with me a lot on the weekends, when I would go in town. So I've kind of been taking a little bit of a break from social media because of that. So thank you guys for the messages and for reaching out to me regarding that. And, just stay tuned. I'll be back the first part of the year with some information about kind of what's going on, things that are planned for the upcoming year. But to take care of a few little housekeeping things here, I've posted the last little bit. A lot of you guys have ordered Ghostbiker merchandise for Christmas, and I do appreciate that. This is not a sales pitch. This is not the purpose for that, but I did just want to make you guys aware. I do have merchandise out there, and because we do not charge to do investigations, and putting these videos together does cost. I fund all of that by doing my artwork. I draw the different haunted locations I go to, and I've got those up for sale, as well as different pieces of Ghostbiker merch. My hat. Whoops.
It's a great hat. It is. It's the most comfortable hat I've ever worn. So.
Hat.
And she didn't pay me to say that.
And we've got Ghostbiker shirts. They've got the little GB logo on the sleeve here, as well as on the back. $15, guys. You're not going to find t-shirts that have all three printings on all sides there, and then also the 3/4 sleeve raglans. The only reason I'm showing you these is that this shirt here is actually going to retire. I think I have about maybe 5 shirts left. It was a huge seller for me, and I'm not going to order anymore. And so anyways, once these are gone, $20. Once these are gone, not ordering anymore. The t-shirts, the black t-shirts and the hats, I currently keep a stock of those, and I've got every size but 2XL, and I've got several in those sizes. But once those are gone, I'm not going to be offering shirts anymore. They're only going to be on a pre-order basis. I just don't have the room to keep any stock on me. So if you want to get those orders in, I have that merch on my website. And like I said, the money to that goes to fund putting these videos together and traveling to these locations. So again, just going to throw that out there because, a lot of it won't be available once this is gone. So anyways, there's that. And like I said, we're going to have vlogs coming up next year, a lot of moto vlogs. Since I travel, some of these may not be haunted. Some of them may just be historical, but we're going to be covering that. I'm going to read a couple of these comments, and then I think we're going to call it a night. Melinda says her husband's cousin became a resident of Brushy in 1990 or 91. When they closed, he was moved to Morgan County Correctional Complex. You need to go to NOLA and investigate room 209 of the French Market Inn. I'm not saying I'll never stay in that room again, but if I did, it wouldn't be by choice. I will definitely add that to my list. I love NOLA. So I was just there Christmas of year before last, and that was a blast down at the Myrtles Plantation, which I highly recommend. Deanne says, is there a time of day or night that you all have noticed paranormal activity being more active? Love learning about this. Thank you both. If you want to answer that from your perspective, and then I'll do mine.
Well, I mean, just if you want to go outside of Brushy, for us, we've had experiences during the day. Paranormal investigators like to investigate during the night because for two reasons. One, we feel that our senses are heightened because you have that, that lack of daylight, that shadow element, if you will. And then also some of our equipment, because it does have lights as indicators, they're easier to show up at night. But we have also absolutely experienced paranormal activity during the day. The investigation that comes to mind for us is the Mom Barker house down in Ocklawaha, Florida. We spent several days there, and a lot of the activity that we got during the day was during when the sun was out. We had spirit box activity. We had EVPs that came to us that we caught on audio as well as hearing them in the moment. So for us, it's all times a day. You just really have to listen, get in tune, and just listen and be open to the possibility that there is paranormal activity.
Yeah, same for me. I actually have gotten some of my best stuff during the day. The only reason that I do some places during night, and I investigate at all times, but some of the reasons that a lot of my videos take place of a night is simply because I investigate a lot of the lesser known locations. And so sometimes they're in the middle of town, or sometimes they're in locations that tend to be busy during the day. And so it's not even really so much for creep factor, but more so just for quietness, to cut down on the noise pollution. That's one of the reasons that I prefer to investigate at night. And, you can even take it a step further. Some investigators like complete dark. I actually like a little bit of ambient light, at either sunrise or sunset. And then having a little bit of light, for me, it helps you get a little more shadow play going on than if it's just pitch black. So yeah, there's not really a time of day that's best for me, but I will say one thing, that at night, at a lot of these different locations, it's almost like you can be investigating and have a lot of activity, and it's like someone just cuts a light switch off and everything's just dead all of a sudden. And, for me, in a lot of the places I've been, that seems to be around 4 or 5 o'clock. But then I'll add that it's almost like there's a little break, and then there's a difference in activity. If it's a hospital, it seems to be like shift change. And at Brushy, I was investigating during the night. There was that lull, and then first thing in the morning, I was getting different activity, more residual. It was more like people getting up, being active. I heard a lot in laundry. Just kind of like just the residual day-to-day activities. So
great question. Thank you.
Yeah, very good question. And then Anthony says he's responding to my question that I had asked about if he had experienced activity or heard anyone else talk about that. He says people have talked about experiences there, and there were lots of noises and shadows, but it was full of inmates at the time, which is, that's on par with what I had heard several other people that work there say, that, they, even with the hustle and bustle of the inmates being there, they had different things that they would see, whether it be like a phantom miner or phantom inmates there during that time. Let's see. Dan says he's going to get a hat to wear on Expedition Entity. I would appreciate that. Thank you, Dan. And I'll have an And Anthony wants a shirt. Yes, I have those, and I'll be sending out. I just sent out the final Christmas order yesterday. So I'll be doing another order at the first of the year. So on that. So just hit me up, go to the website and order, and we'll get those out. Let's see. Chris Llewellyn says he wants to go on an adventure. And Dan Norville also goes back and says what we were just saying, that he's caught tons of stuff in the day as well. Mm-hmm. So again, I want to thank you all for tuning in. Absolutely. We're gonna wrap it up, and just be on the lookout. Watch for different things that's coming up on both my website as well as Dr. Sumner's. If you want to go on and tell people how they can follow you and connect with you, that'd be great.
Sure. Our website is www.soulsistersparanormal.com. We also have a Facebook page, soulsistersparanormal.com. We do a lot of interaction with Miranda's page as well as the Ghost Biker page. So probably anytime you just scroll through her feed and you'll find us on there eventually. So we'd love the connections, any shares. We have a YouTube channel, Soul Sisters Paranormal. We'd love anybody that would subscribe to us. We'd really appreciate it. And 2019 was a really good year for us. We met a lot of great people through the paranormal community, which, if you're not a paranormal investigator, it's a large community, but it's also very small at the same time. So people like Heather, it's been great meeting you, Dan, Joe, just a lot of great people. Miranda, like I said, we met this year. So just a great group of people in the paranormal community. So I encourage you to follow those other people that I mentioned as well. And just thank you for a great 2019, and looking forward to 2020.
Yeah, and these folks that Dr. Sumner mentioned, they've got videos, they've got podcasts, they've all got different ways that they're sharing their story of what they're doing. So, definitely go on, follow these people, support them. They're doing some really cool things and sharing this history and getting their adventures and stuff out there. So anyways, thanks again, you guys. And just stay tuned. We'll have some more stuff coming up throughout the coming year.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Goodbye.